Hey, Faith family, this is Pastor Ben, and I am here to introduce to you the next book in our Bible reading plan, which we are scheduled to start tomorrow, which is the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth is set during the time of Judges, so it's happening during the events of the book of Judges that we just finished reading. And the book of Judges is a dark time in Israel's history. It's kind of characterized by people doing everything that they thought was right in their own eyes. And yet, in the midst of this chaos, is a beautiful love story that is recorded in the book of Ruth. And it stands as a contrast to what is happening in the book of Judges. It's a beautifully simple love story that demonstrates God's faithfulness to keep his promises even in the midst of chaos. The book of Ruth serves as a bridge between the time of the Judges and Israel's first monarchy when Saul was made king. And the message of this book is that while in the time of Judges, God is providentially accomplishing his plan through seemingly unimportant events to accomplish his plan for redemption. And so there's a simple, basic outline to the book of Ruth. There's only 4 chapters. Each chapter is a different scene in this story. The first chapter is kind of a tragic beginning. Ruth and Naomi go into a foreign land. Their husbands die, and Ruth goes back to Israel with Naomi to take care of her mother-in-law. Ruth and Boaz meet in chapter 2, and then in chapter 3, Ruth appeals to Boaz as her kinsman redeemer, asking that he would take care of her and provide for her and protect her as God had laid out in his law. And then in chapter 4, Boaz and Ruth marry, and the book ends with a short genealogy that connects Ruth to the King David. So Ruth is the great-grandmother of David. And there's 5 key themes here that I want to tell you about in the book of Ruth to be looking for as you read. First of all, we see God's providence on display. God works in 2 ways in the Bible, miraculously and providentially. The miraculous often gets the most attention, but providentially, God is always working to accomplish his plans. And it may not be as dramatic, but it's a reminder that he is at work even when it seems like he is not. So God is providentially working in the life of Ruth. Secondly, we see the value of kindness over and over again throughout the book. The word kindness is stressed. Ruth shows kindness to Naomi. Boaz shows kindness to Ruth. And we see this kindness in the midst of chaos in the book of Judges as displaying God's character. Third, we see God's compassion to the poor. The way that Ruth meets Boaz is as she is gleaning the field that Boaz owned. And gleaning was an Old Testament practice where poor people could go into fields and pick up what remained after the harvest, and they were able to provide for their needs while experiencing the dignity of work. And this is all designed by God. And so we see God's compassion towards the poor. Fourth, we see God has a heart for the nations. What's interesting about the book of Ruth is that Ruth is a Moabitess. She is not from the people of Israel. And yet God draws her to himself and allows her to be a part of his redemptive plan, showing that his plan is bigger than just that for Israel. And then fifth, we are reminded of the need for redemption. We are reminded of the fact that we have been separated from God. Boaz served as Ruth's redeemer, which means he committed to protect her and to provide for her at a great cost to himself. Boaz's actions changed Ruth's status. She went from being poor to being rich. She went from being a widow to being a wife. She was moved from being an outcast to being accepted into the family of God. And she went from being childless to being a mother. Her status was changed by her Redeemer. And so Boaz points us to our greater Redeemer, Jesus, who delivers us from our sins and transfers us from the domain of darkness into his kingdom. So these are the themes you should be looking out for in the book of Ruth. I hope you enjoy this book. God bless.